said Islam allows you to strike your wife, correct?
Yes.
Does the Bible allow that?
I haven't read it.
You never read your Bible?
If you could show me where you can beat your wife.
You just sat there yapping about Muslims not knowing the Bible. Now you're saying you don't know the Bible. What's
fighting?
And what happens if she does?
I don't remember the rest of it, but I know there's a judgment.
Let me freshen your memory.
Yeah, come on.
Deuteronomy 25:11. If she reaches out and seizes him by his private parts, you shall cut her hand off and show her no pity. Would you use a machete or a knife?
All right, Shalom Aleichem, Hebrew Torah 101. We just saw 2 clips of Tazariak and Central Dawa having a discussion about the Torah, and it was all built upon the Quran allowing a man to strike his wife in the midst of confrontation or some disobedience. And the question was opposed to Tazariak: does the Torah or the Bible allow for a man to abuse his wife in any way, shape, or form? Okay, within that line of questioning, Central Dawa brings Tazariak to Deuteronomy 25 and verse 11, where we have the verse of 2 men fighting with each other, and a woman, or the wife of the one man, reaches out to crush the private parts of the opposing man. Okay, and the judgment is to not have any pity on her and to cut off her hand, as the law states. Now we have a couple things to go over when we're talking about this verse. But number one, let's first start off by stating that this verse does not allow for a man to abuse or hit his wife in any way, shape, or form. What's going on here is a man is fighting another man, and the woman interferes in the fair fight. This is not a fight that the man is like his life is in danger, but he's fighting with his brother, and the woman reaches out and crushes his private parts. All right, and his private parts, we know as men, that's where our life, our life seed lies. And if you destroy that, then you can't have any kids. So this is the context of the whole verse here. All right, let's get some insight. So when we're talking about these type of matters in judgment, we have to understand that when it says you shall sew off or cut off her hand, it's not the husband's responsibility to cut off his wife's hand. This is not the same as the Quran allowing a man to hit his woman in some type of disobedience. It's not the same at all. So in the court of law, in Deuteronomy chapter 16 and verse 18, it says, judges and officers shall be appointed in your gates, which the Lord has given you throughout your tribes. Okay, so we have judges and rulers within the gates. So when these situations occur, as we read in Deuteronomy chapter 25, verse 11, it's not the husband who enacts the judgment or the punishment on his wife. It's the judges and the officers at the gates of that city who enacts the judgment. So just like any other case, if you have a confrontation with another fellow in the camp or whatever the case may be, you don't handle the case yourself. You bring it before the judges and the officers, and they enact the righteous judgment according to the situation at hand. Now let's talk about the judgment of actually cutting off the hand, or is it another punishment as well? So within Torah, we have something called life for a life, tooth for a tooth, eye for an eye, so forth and so forth. So within the book of Leviticus chapter 24 and verse 17, we have 2 situations here. One where it's taken literal, and another where it's taken as compensation. All right, so verse 17 states, and he who unalives any man should surely be unalive. All right, so that would be an implication for a life in a literal way. However, we have a situation that says, and he who unalives a beast shall make good. All right, so make compensation. Beast for beast. All right, but in Hebrew, the version is nefish dahat nafish, life for life. So we have situations where the judges can enact a literal punishment, as mentioned in the Torah, or it can be by compensation. So in the matter of the woman fighting with the man, it would depend on the severity of the issue, whether if it's going to be taken literal or compensation is going to be made, depending on the severity of the issue. All right, so for the Muslims who may not understand exactly what I'm saying, they're ignorant to how Torah law works and how it's practiced, let me use the Quran for a second so you can understand. So in Surah chapter 5 and verse 38, we have the thief, the male and the female, amputate their hands and compensate for what they have committed as a deterrent from Allah. So as a punishment for Allah, the male or the female thief, their hands are amputated. However, any Muslim knows that this is situational, or it depends. We could have a poor kid, a poor man, or poor woman stealing something, all right? In that case, it's taken before the judges of that court, and those judges are going to evaluate the situation, and they're going to say, hey, this person stole because where they were poor, or maybe they're trying to do some good, or whatever the case may be, and they come up with another judgment other than cutting off the hand. So this is what we mean in the Torah, where the woman hand can be amputated or not, depending on the situation at hand. All right, to wrap this up, in Deuteronomy 25, verse 11, this is not a law that gives a man or a husband the right to abuse his wife and put his hands on her in any way, shape, or form. What's happening there is two men are fighting. It's a fair fight. Nobody's in danger of unaliving the other. And the woman comes and she crushes the private parts of the man, destroying his livelihood of producing children. And the punishment that could be removing a hand or compensating. It's just that simple. So know the law. The Torah does not allow a man to beat his wife like the Quran does. Shalom.